Today I guess I'm going to be talking about my 5 favorite presidents. And, only rule I guess I have is I must be basing this off of their actual presidential career. So, for example, George Washington or, say, Andrew Jackson, they both had very successful military careers. And the Revolution, both of them, and the Battle of New Orleans for Jackson. I will not be judging that as a part of their presidency. Also, I will not be considering any 21st century, so Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, or Biden. None of them are in here. HW is, though. Guess that's it. I'll get into my number 5. So my number 5, or 5th favorite president, or I guess I want to say 40th least favorite presidents, as you could say, 41st least favorite presidents, will be Ulysses S. Grant. Now, I have Grant up here somewhat for his role in the Civil War. I mean, his campaign in the Mississippi was good, but as I previously said not that long ago, the Mississippi campaign does not mean anything to me. It was more so a footnote in his presidency, or not presidency, but why he's up here. But the real reason is, I want to say it was the 15th Amendment or something like that, and that he passed, which allowed the former slaves to officially become citizens. And also his, just in general, civil rights advocacy. There were 2 scandals I do recall him being from. One was the whiskey one, where he basically did embezzlement. And of course, that is bad. I'm not going to advocate for that, but I mean, people have done much worse than embezzlement, and presidents have done much worse than embezzlement. I mean, we could go to, like, James Buchanan and his just a lot of corruption, or we can go to Richard Nixon and his Watergate scandal and the cover-up of the Watergate scandal and bribing people of the Watergate to not speak on behalf of some people for the Watergate scandal. Basically, then again, I don't believe he was a part of it, so that I will give him some leniency for that, but we're talking about Grant right now. He scored high for his civil rights advocacy, actually managed to get them through, and basically being able to undo what Andrew Johnson did, which was undoing what Lincoln did of reunification, basically trying to undo that, or not good with that, but pretty sure he was trying to give the South a buttload of leniency, which Lincoln was trying to do, but Grant gave the South leniency, allowing them to integrate back into normal life, but still forced them to do general stuff of the wars. E.g., Robert E. Lee would be punished. The leader, Jefferson Davis, would be punished. People like that, the main generals would be punished. The soldiers would be set free. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the general gist. We'll go number 4. I'm still questioning this idea of if I should have this guy here, but I'm going with a good, reliable choice for any top 5 list, JFK. Kennedy, his space race program is a double-edged sword. I do strongly believe that we needed the space race program. I mean, without it, I wouldn't be able to make this video, but he spent, I want to say billions, but it was probably millions, with an M, not a B, on making some rockets. Now, I'm not gonna go, oh, he was recruiting German scientists from World War II, oh no, sure they did bad stuff, but I'll go Van Braun. His political ideology might not have been in the right place, but it was, the US and Germany, the Third Reich, to be specific, that was using Van Braun for his missiles, the rockets. Well, Van Braun wanted to use them to get to the moon. So that's something, and I mean, Kennedy did reform the thing over no longer a arms race to a space race, which I do give him credit for that. Overall, in the whole, I believe he was early 70s or late 60s, one of the two, his whole reforms that he managed to do, he was, I'm saying, the youngest president, because we're not counting Obama in this list. The 21st century presidents don't count, and same thing with Ford. Teddy, when he was the youngest, was only acting president. I do count him for his young role. Like, he was young but still. And yeah, so Kennedy was sort of leading the young people, reforming the Democrat Party from what's even just a few presidents ago, Truman, 2 presidents ago, was Truman was doing with like a really southern-based support system. We could see that with FDR really relying on, like, not really relying on the South, but the South was important to his campaign. He was appealing to the North, but not going too extreme that the South would leave him. And we can even go back to Wilson, which I want to say was from the South, relying on the Democrats. So the Democrats were a very Southern party, and Kennedy basically brought that back up. Not back up, but Kennedy brought that more up to the North, which we can see the Democrat Party now. And just in general, he sort of reformed the Democratic Party from being in their older system to being more of the progressive party that the Republicans used to be with Teddy Roosevelt. And with that, you can point to Kennedy's affairs and say that was bad, but again, with what was it, Van Braun, I don't really care if you're basing someone's ability to lead from their personal decisions over their actual career ones. I mean, depends on what it is, but if you have this person who's bringing a third world nation into the first GDP country, and maybe they're not the best of people, sure, we call them out for not being the best of people, but they're still a good president. And I think that wraps up my JFK one. Now let's go to my number 3. This one could be a little controversial. One person before Kennedy, which would be Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, Ike was a good president. I'm not gonna say he was riding Truman, like his ability to lead the country, but he was definitely using his economic rebound, and Eisenhower was able to turn that rebound into more of a boom. And just in general, he was not really political reformer, just more so reformed the nation. So he brought the economy back, not back, but he brought the economy to new bounds. He led the war in Korea, which I'm gonna Korea I can't defend because the North not necessarily invaded the South, but sort of triggered the whole conflict, and the U.S. was just helping them, and especially the international the international highway system. That one was good. But again, like Grant, he was big in the civil rights advocacy. He wasn't as extreme as Grant or even JFK, but he did do good in Little Rock. He sent soldiers down. Don't think he called martial law in, but he brought in the soldiers to help the. I want to say they were the Little Rock Nine. I may be wrong there, but overall, like, was a well-rounded president. Again, like Grant, also his military career in D-Day and the capitulation of Nazi Germany was something that I do like. So that was one. Then, speaking of Germany in World War II, let's go to number 2 of my favorite presidents, FDR. Before FDR was one, but I mean, I would replace him with someone else for the one singular fact of they were concentration camps. He rounded up many Japanese citizens, essentially ethnically cleansing California, I believe. I believe California just removed all Japanese citizens and brought them to these camps. They weren't labor camps, they just weren't the best of conditions. So, take that as you will. I mean, the whole camps was bad. I could defend that to a certain point, but I mean, like, it's FDR. I mean, sure, I get it if you do it like the islands, like you do it in Hawaii, or like you do it in like I want to say not Midland, Midway. Yeah, it's Midway. It's Midway. And like different areas like that, or like you take over Iwo Jima, then you do it there. I can't think of many islands in the Pacific. I'm not good in Pacific geography, but just in general, like that kind of stuff. Like if you were to like stop the Japanese from spying on you once you capture an island, I could see that as somewhat justifiable. But doing that to the mainland, where I believe the mainland only had 6 casualties from one stray balloon from the Japanese. I mean, that wasn't really a coordinated attack by the Japanese at all. They just sent a bunch of balloons over, I want to say Seattle or like somewhere in like Washington or Oregon area. They sent a bunch of balloons. Most of them were shot down, I believe, or they flew off course. But one of them did crash, I believe, and did what it had to, or did what it was meant to do and killed 6 people. But, I mean, imprisoning hundreds of thousands of people, I mean, and the worst thing that you got was 6 casualties. You can make the argument that it was because they imprisoned all those people that they only had 6 casualties, but the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Army was much stronger than the Japanese, especially after the Battle of Iwo Jima, where the Japanese Navy was destroyed. But I do give him credit for his New Deal program, bringing us out of the Great Depression, all this great stuff that he did do. It was a stain on his legacy, to be sure. Now, I'm going to the next one. This one is controversial. I mean, especially after FDR being so low on the list. Or not so low, but second place is, I want to say, his uncle, Teddy Roosevelt. Now, quick thing before I start talking about Theodore Roosevelt is everyone in between Roosevelt, the 2 Roosevelts. So that's Taft, Wilson, Hoover, Coolidge, and I can't see that guy. I've got a poster in my room, and it's tilted off to the side because one of the corners nails like got ripped off. So it's now an angle and it's curved over, if I can remember. So yeah, all those presidents don't like them in the slightest. I mean, yeah. Now onto Teddy. Well, his whole national parks thing, that was really good. Trust busting, I believe it was called, where he essentially destroyed monopolies, which I recently watched a video on the thing between him and Rockefeller and Morgan, no, not Morgan Wallen, J.P. Morgan, and like those dudes, where he wanted to sort of stop them from being able to get a chokehold on the U.S. market. He was not against monopolies, he was just against chokeholding monopolies. The whole trust-busting thing was more to regulate them. He was definitely more of the people, not of the people, but for the people. You can definitely, like, tell that by some of his experiences that he's done, and just overall how he acts. Now, you can point to his racism as a problem, but that's, like, he did tone it down in his later years, where he can go to his, idea that we needed to take over the Philippines. And if you know anything about the American-Philippine War, you know it wasn't bad. It was bad. Where the Americans were blockading the Philippine island and basically, like, torturing them to give up information sometimes they didn't even have, and the Philippines weren't much better. They were doing, not total war, but, guerrilla warfare methods, which I don't hate guerrilla methods until you start acting as a civilian, then ambushing the soldiers. Like, either you're a soldier or a civilian, you can't be both. Like, you're not a guerrilla. Like, no, you can't just ambush an enemy soldier. That's, I believe, a war crime nowadays, and so yeah. But he did actually change his mind on his whole stance with the colonization of the Philippines. He did hear how bad it was. And if I can recall, it was either Cleveland or McKinley, one of the two, where they also heard how bad it was. And what they did was essentially make the Philippines an autonomous state, sort of like it was, right? So like it was essentially its own acting country. It was just under the protection of the United States, and the United States being the United States, what does it want? Resources, and resources they'll take. So yeah, but the thing I just talked about, Teddy Roosevelt, is the biggest thing that I liked about him is he was willing to change his stance on stuff. Now, some people may think, you believe in something, you have to go for it, no matter what. But that's just a dumb ideology. Like, I don't know how to say this, but like, are you gonna tell, say, a racist person who realizes their views aren't good anymore and want to change for the better, you're gonna tell them, no, you have to stay racist. You just aren't. Like, let them become a fine-ish person, I guess. But yes, if you change your stance to something you feel is a better stance than what you had before, or something that will benefit the nation, and you're changing your stance from the bad side to the good side, like, sure, you deserve to be punished for being on the bad side in the first place, but I mean, you really be punished that hard for realizing your ways were bad. You see what I'm saying there? So, recap will go, it was Grant, JFK, Ike, Grant, JFK, Ike, FDR, Teddy. That was my roundup. We'll go with some other honorable mentions. Those being George Washington, he did do good, but I didn't choose him for his major problem being, well, he was the first president and all, but like, I don't know, something on him just ticked me off. From what I can tell, he was a good person. I guess what I can say is he owned slaves, but I mean, that can't really count. But Washington would be there. I just don't see what he did so impressive. Like, he just basically stabilized the nation. I mean, FDR did that. Who else? Bush did that. Bush W did that, I believe. Kennedy did that. Like, a bunch of other presidents stabilized this nation. But they aren't on this list. Another one being Jefferson. If we're going Jefferson versus Hamilton, like that whole argument they had, I was Jefferson. Like, I really don't see why Virginia should be paying off Pennsylvanian debts. I do see them paying off a certain amount of debt, sort of to an extent, like maybe like a few $1,000s. I don't know how much Pennsylvania had in debt at that time, but yeah. Another one that was an honorable mention was Lincoln. The reason Lincoln was not on here was, well, the Civil War. I did not like how he dealt with it. He didn't do good, but the Union had all these strengths. Like, we can even go to McClellan. He wasn't a bad general. He wasn't incompetent. He was just, how do I say this, scared. I don't think he actually fought in American soil before, or he fought in any actual war. That's like sending a new soldier off. Like, he was probably more so scared of what might happen if he fails, or what happens if it actually does succeed, what goes on next, and all these things that he hasn't actually prepared for. From what I could tell, he was a pretty good president. No, a pretty good general. He did have skill behind him. Even Grant backed him up, saying that he was out of the military for a few years. So that's saying that a veteran a veteran that just got home, they started living a normal life, and they were told, yeah, you want to fight for your country again? Like, of course they're gonna have some problems. Like, sure, they served before, but they just got out of it. They don't want to go right back into what they just got out of. But, yeah, do not like Lincoln in the Civil War. We could have had someone much better, but, I mean, if you were given the choice between Buchanan again or Lincoln, I would take Lincoln. He was good at keeping the nation together. Give him credit for that. Lincoln would probably be a 15th or 16th president for me for those reasons. Another somewhat honorable mention would be Andrew Jackson. No, he paid off the nation's debts when it was at the lowest. He did what was best for the common man of the white land-owning southern citizens. And he also eased the government money system by removing the Native Americans through the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act. Essentially doing the bad of FDR, but doing it the wrong way, I guess. There is no good way to do that. Still looking at that poster, LBJ would be another good mention. I believe he was the biggest president in the civil rights. He, allowed the blacks to vote, stuff like that. And, if you hear that beeping in the background, it's, my sister's screwing around over there. Another honorable mention. Yeah, there's no more honorable mentions. Now let's do something special for this. I'm gonna do my 3 least favorite presidents now. This is gonna be more loosey-goosey. we'll start off with um, first and second, same rules apply. Pre presidency, don't care, and 21st century can't count. So that means I'm not counting Bush. Then I'll go on. So 1 and 2 is common consensus. Buchanan and Johnson, they both sucked. They were not Southern sympathizers, but Buchanan was corrupt, and he was unwilling to do any presidenting, essentially putting Lincoln into a horrible area of command. And I do sympathize Lincoln with that. He was put into a horrible situation, not even with the Civil War itself, but just how the country was managed. Then we could go Andrew Johnson. He was put into a good position of power by Lincoln. The people, or at least the Northerners, were unified. He could have easily brought the Southerners back in with Lincoln's policies of minimal efforts, and as long as I believe it was 1/3 of the state said that they were loyal to the North again, the whole state could come back in. But Johnson screwed that up. Basically made it just integrate, meaning that Grant had to come and save it. So let's props to Grant doing what Lincoln did again, but better. Now here is a more controversial take. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm gonna say Ronald Reagan. Sure, you can say, oh, but he did good, he saved the economy during a recession, and he brought the economy up, and he did all this great stuff for America. But the nuclear building that he did, sure, he tore down the Berlin Wall, but he built a lot of nukes. And everyone says that once the Berlin Wall fell, so did the Soviet Union. It wasn't gonna stop. Gorbachev's reforms weren't gonna change anything. But then why did Reagan have to build all those nukes? Oh, but it was preemptive in case the Soviet Union launched them. Gorbachev is not that stupid. He was not paranoid like Stalin. He was not crazy communist like Khrushchev or Lenin or something like that. He was trying to reform the Soviet Union. He did not care about the U.S. anymore at this point. He just wanted to save the Soviet Union and what remained. I'm pretty sure he was willing to let the Iron Curtain fall. He was willing to give up Poland and East Germany and Yugoslavia and the Czech Republic, Slavia. I'm pretty sure he was just trying to make sure the Soviet Union didn't fall apart. Reagan, I'm pretty sure, knew that. And if he didn't, I mean, he probably should have done more diplomatic talks with Gorbachev then. But I mean, all that spending on the nuclear arms race and the nuclear buildup was just a bunch of wasted money. We could go back to Kennedy. You could say something like, oh, but how did Kennedy score so high, even though he spent a buttload of money on the rockets? That was kind of necessary. The Soviets were threatening to just, beat us. And, what was it? Yeah, Khrushchev was still in power, and he wasn't in with this reform stuff. He was beat the U.S., beat the U.S., beat the U.S. He was, though anti-Stalin, he was still a Soviet. I mean, JFK could have just let it go, say, oh, you're not wasting all that money on that. But, I mean, there's a difference from trying to build up to stop a rival and building in case of a rival. Especially in Reagan's terms. I mean, that was a bunch of wasted money. I mean, JFK spent the money, we got huge technological improvements. I mean, it was the whole space race just brought us light years ahead of what we should have been at. But then Reagan's nuclear bombs, I mean, at this point we're supposed to scrap, we're not supposed to, but we should probably scrap them. I mean, they're old, we don't know if they're going to work. If we do fire them in a preemptive strike, it might be shot down, and stuff like that. And then another one would be, well, just a big one is, I can't remember the exact law, but Fox News, we can pretty much agree it's a little right-leaning. Now, I'm not going to say it's extremely right, but if that's implied, I'm not going to stop the implications now. Now, before, Fox had to report the left side, and CNN had to report the right side. Sort of like WPR or NPR is today. They're going both sides. Not showing off their biased take or the other side's biased take or something. It was a law that it basically ensured that everyone was getting the other side's idea, so then they wouldn't go extremely radical. But that kind of deteriorated when Reagan was like, yeah, what if we just get rid of that? And Fox started to get more right-wing, and next thing we know, we have H.W. Bush in power. I can't really say anything bad about him, because I don't know much about him, but, I mean, a big mistake would be giving birth to George W. Bush. I mean, Bill Cheney, or whatever, I can't remember if it's Bill or something, but Cheney was a problem to say the least. Without Reagan, there would be no Bush. We'd still be the very prestigious 1990s United States. Again, like I previously said, the people who took down the Soviet Union, who unified the Western world, and who's rebuilding the world piece by piece. But Bush threw that all out, Reagan threw that all out, and Nixon threw all that out. I'm not gonna go into Nixon, I mean, he was corrupt. I, again, don't really think he had anything to do with Watergate, but, yeah, so I guess that's where I ended. That's my top 5 favorite presidents, then my rough list for my 3 least favorite presidents. Didn't do much research, just used my prior knowledge about all 8 people. Please feel free to tell me what you think the 5 best presidents are. If, say, you didn't agree with what I said about Reagan or Bush, or what I said about FDR was quite particularly fair, let me know, and I will, but still feel free, I will read it, I will take it into consideration, and more than likely, because I will probably ignore it, because you're probably going to give me some half-brained response. No, I'm not dealing with that stuff. So I guess, yeah, that's it.